The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Be a movie. Yeah, we're gonna be a movie.
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Be a movie. We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody.
And me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in. We're gonna start right here.
And we are going to start right here. Welcome. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast, triple feature. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And this is the end. Goodbye. No. This is the end, my friends, of Black History Month here in the year of our Lord 2025 on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. And joining me to conclude this year's look at Black cinema, Afrocentric cinema, celebration of Black culture far and wide, he's the Black Irish, the Great White Hype. Ladies and gentlemen, don't ask him for gambling picks because he ain't got none. Jason Soulman Teasley. How do you do, sir?
Doing good. Closing out yet another year of two white guys on Black history in cinema. It feels like we've been doing this much longer than we have, but
Yeah.
it's always a joy to come on here, expand my horizons, watch movies that normally I wouldn't be seeking out. And tonight we get to talk about one of the greatest African American actors of our generation, and Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson might be the definition of prolific. Like, he's... Here's the thing. When I selected the films, I wanted to talk about Snakes on a Plane because that's a fun movie to talk about. And I love The Great White Hype. It's one of my favorite movies of all time for a variety of reasons. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, we've done Richard Pryor. We've done Pam Grier. We've done Eddie Murphy. What's another actor that we can focus on and tell a story? And it's like, well, Samuel L. Jackson, the answer, that's low-hanging fruit. It's right there. And we'll get into his demographic information in just a minute. But I was thinking about, what can I pick from the over 150 films Samuel Jackson has been in? And that's the thing. He's in a lot of ensembles. He's in a lot of, supporting actor, or, he's, the angry dad, or he's a tertiary character of some kind. My God, he was Mace Windu in the Star Wars prequel series, which no one's taking away his starring role in that. But is that a Samuel L. Jackson movie? No one would say that. He's a starring player in the Avengers as Nick Fury. Are those his movies? They are not. And he's like I said, he's an angry dad in half a dozen pictures. He shows up in places you're like, holy shit, where'd he come from? And when we've already talked about a whole bunch of, we did Shaft already, we did Black Snake Moan. And so I was really struggling. I was like, I want to find a movie that really features him at the top of the cast. It is a Samuel Jackson movie, and it's not easy. He's been in so much stuff, but then you realize he's not the star of a lot of them. He's supporting cast in most of the things that he's in. What an interesting filmography that gives him and a story, don't you think?
Yeah, because and you'll get this reference. He's basically Jamaican because he
Yes, I actually do get that reference. I'm the shoe
He
shine man. I'm the cleaning man. I'm the janitor.
yes, because he plays so many roles across so many movies, and I don't think he's ever said no to a movie. Um, and there's not a lot that he's actually starring in that we haven't covered. So these three was great picks by you
Yeah,
to pull out.
I went through his IMDb and I happened to see Soulman and I was like, I don't remember that one. And I looked at it and I was like, when we looked at Eddie Murphy and we looked at Richard Pryor, a big part of our selection process was I Made You. But the other one was who they were co-starred with. Who do they have great comic chemistry with? We looked at, a Richard Pryor movie where he's teamed up with Jackie Gleason in The Toy, or he was teamed up with John Candy in Brewster's Millions. With Eddie Murphy, we went out of our way to pick three different actors, three different comedians
Yeah.
that he matched up well with. Dan Aykroyd, Martin Lawrence, that was your pick, and remember what the other one was. I remember. Oh, Iron Harlem Nights, duh, and Red
Yeah.
Fox. It's the Red Fox, baby. So
Yeah.
here we have Soul Men with Bernie Mac, the late great Bernie Mac, who deserves an actor focus in his own right. And there's another one who very rarely starred in anything but besides his own television show, but was always a great supporting cast member. So it'll be fun to talk about that one because Samuel L. Jackson and Bernie Mac had a special kind of chemistry that I never knew about because I don't think I'd ever seen this movie. So that's what we're talking about tonight. Snakes on a Plane, because Jason, I am sick of these. I have had enough of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane.
No, I've had enough of these monkey flying snakes on this Monday to Friday plane.
Okay, I'm glad you watched it on regular cable.
No, it spawned a whole subgenre
Mm-hmm.
of just that line, the television edit of that line.
Oh yeah, good stuff. Yeah, so we're talking about Snakes on a Plane, The Great White Hype, and Soul Men. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. They are soul men. Samuel L. Jackson was born, which goes without saying, on December 21st, 1948. One of the most widely recognized actors of his generation, the films in which he has appeared in have collectively grossed more than $27 billion worldwide, making him the highest grossing actor of all time. In 2022, he received the Academy Honorary Award as a cultural icon whose dynamic work has resonated across genres and generations and audiences worldwide. He made his professional theater debut in Mother Courage and Her Children in 1980 at the Public Theater. From 81 to 83, he originated the role of Private Lewis Henderson in a soldier's play off-Broadway. He went on to receive a Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Play, a nomination for which. His early film roles include Coming to America in 1988, where he plays a bum, Juice, which I barely even remember him in that one, True Romance,
Yeah.
Menace to Society, and Fresh, which came out in 1994. His early collaboration with Spike Lee led to greater prominence with films such as School Days, Do the Right Thing, which we covered on here, Mo Better Blues, and Jungle Fever. Wah, wah. Jackson's breakout performance was as Jules Winnfield in Quentin Tarantino's crime drama Pulp Fiction, for which he won a BAFTA Award for Best Supporting Actor and received the nomination for an Academy Award for the Best Supporting Actor. He continued to collaborate with Lee in Old Boy and Chirac in 2015, and then later Jackie Brown, which we covered on here, Kill Bill Volume 2, Django Unchained, and The Hateful Eight, which we also reviewed. He, as we mentioned before, he is Mace Windu in the prequel trilogy, Nick Fury in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He is Frozone in The Incredibles. He was in Die Hard with a Vengeance. He has a very famous, really dramatic, interesting part in A Time to Kill. Now, what if she was white, Jason? He was in M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable, the aforementioned Chef, which we covered on here, Coach Carter, which we talked about a week or two ago, Snakes on a Plane, which we're going to talk about shortly. He's in the Kingsman movies, Kong Skull Island, and then Glass. I think all told, it's 150 movies, something along those.
Yeah, it's a very long filmography that he has.
Yeah. He's won one Academy Award. He was he in 2021 he had the honorary Academy Award. Then, as I mentioned, he was nominated for Pulp Fiction.
I thought he won it for Snakes on a Plane.
No, sir. He's been nominated for 4 Golden Globes. Against the Wall, Pulp Fiction, A Time to Kill, and Jackie Brown. 4 Independent Spirit Awards. He won 2 when he was nominated for 2. He was nominated for a Primetime Emmy for Afro Samurai. Great name of a show, by the way.
That is a good show.
Nominated for 2 Tonys. And then he's won a couple of different Audie Awards. He won for The Bible Experience, for Nelson Mandela's favorite African folk tales. He was nominated for Go the Fuck to Sleep, which is fucking amazing, by the way.
Yeah, that children's book is great.
He won an MTV Music Award for Django Unchained. He won an NAACP Image Award for A Time to Kill, Coach Carter, Mother and Child, and Django Unchained. And then a couple of Film Critic Awards, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, one of the most decorated actors of our time. Certainly certainly one of the great black actors that we've ever done. And I don't think I really knew much about Samuel Jackson before Pulp Fiction. Certainly, his role as Jules is a standout performance. I think I said recently to somebody, "Does Marcellus Wallace look like a bitch to you?" I might have said it to my kids, actually. Like, they were doing something like, "Does Marcellus look like a bitch to you?" What? Does Marcellus Wallace look like a bitch to you? No. Then why are you trying to fuck him?
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction definitely.
You ever just scream at somebody and say, "What again, motherfucker? I dare you. I double dare you."
Yeah, Pulp Fiction was definitely, basically, it was Samuel L. Jackson's personality. Just, I really think that he was just let go to just ad lib everything that he said in there, because it is actually.
Who didn't want a wallet that was personally stitched "bad motherfucker" on it after that movie? I know I did.
Oh yeah, I may have had one, may have not. You'll never know. But yeah, I mean, and like we was talking about earlier, his contributions has always been that go-to supporting character.
Yeah.
You know, and even if it's a supporting role like in the Avengers, like Django, you always remember him. He stands out, and he's just one of those things that you can get a motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, you know that you're gonna get at least one or two.
He has a very commanding presence. He can be intimidating. I mean, we talked about this last year with his performance in Black Snake Moan, where he's obviously a very physical, intimidating force, but he's also soft and warm and nurturing. The way we talked about this with that movie, the way he takes care of and kind of restores to health Christina Ricci. What range in just one movie he had?
Oh, I would have never watched Black.
That's the word I was looking for. He's a credit to his race. I could not remember the word credit. Sorry, keep going.
I would have never watched Black Snake Moan if it wasn't for you, and it has actually moved its way into my top 10 favorite movies. And
then this was all worth it. All the hours, the broken marriage, time spent away from my children. I got Jason to appreciate Black Snake Moan. All right, thanks everybody. I'm out.
No, I mean, start that shit. No, but I mean, really, it's worked its way watching it, because you get to see the range he has. You get to see the fact that he can play that dramatic character, a dramatic, sympathetic character, and he's not always the loud, angry black man that he's been portrayed in so many movies.
Right, exactly. So let's get into the first one here. Snakes on a Plane, which is a 2006 American action thriller horror movie, film directed by David R. Ellis. If you don't know who David R. Ellis is, some of his movies, you've seen all of his movies. I do this bit, and he was a director in The Final Destination, Cellular, Final Destination 2. Okay, there we go. Just looking at the wrong list.
Way to be prepared, Mark.
Shut up. You just have to show up and make a salient point, maybe. I have to actually prepare this stuff. Don't you fuck with me. He's got a longer list as a second unit director, and he second unit directed a lot of movies. Fatal Attraction, Patriot Games, Body of Evidence, Clear and Present Danger, the 1994 Jungle Book, some recent stuff. The Matrix Reloaded, Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, Cop Out, R.I.P.D., 47 Ronin. Television, he worked on Baywatch. He's acted in a couple of movies. He had a small part in Rocky 3. He was in Blind Fury and The Mighty Quinn, speaking of Jamaican accents. He's done a bunch of stunt coordinating, so he's definitely made his way around Hollywood. He also worked on V and V: The Final Battle. So that's David R. Ellis. And starring, obviously, Samuel L. Jackson. It was released by New Line Cinema, the House of Horror, before Blumfield. On August 18th, 2006, in North America and the UK. It was written by David D'Alessandro and John Heffernan and Sebastian Gutierrez, and follows the events of dozens of venomous snakes being released on a passenger plane in an attempt to kill a trial witness. The film gained considerable amount of attention before its release, forming large fan bases online and becoming an internet phenomenon due to the film's title, casting, and premise. In response to the internet fan base, New Line Cinema incorporated feedback from online users into its production. Always a great idea to ask the mob for their opinion. And added 5 days of reshooting. Before and after the film was released, it was parodied and alluded to on television shows and films, fan-made videos, video games, and various forms of literature. Unfortunately, just because you ask the internet and they become obsessed with something like Barbenheimer doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make $1 billion. It received mixed reviews and was a box office disappointment. Despite the immense internet buzz, the film's gross revenue did not live up to expectations. It earned $15.25 million in its opening weekend. It, on a $33 million budget, made $62 million. So, not great. But everyone remembers that line. I am sick of these. I've had it with these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane. That's all anyone ever remembers about this movie.
Yeah,
I kind of just go ahead.
What's interesting about Snakes on a Plane is they wanted to change the title to like Flight 1481, and Samuel L. Jackson said if they changed the title, he would drop out of the movie.
As well, he should.
Because he said that it just sounded like some generic film. But Snakes on a Plane is a title that reaches out and grabs you and makes you want to go to the theater and see.
You know, it's
so
not
that's kind of an interesting thing.
It's not particularly exploitive. It doesn't necessarily play into stereotypes, not black ones at least. There's some degree of white ones, but we'll talk about it. But I don't think of it in terms of blaxploitation, in terms of like exploiting black stereotypes. But I do think it is a modern B movie. Like we talked about this with like The Ladies' Man, Pootie Tang, and Soul Plane. Speaking of Soul Men, where we're still making stuff that's just shy of being like minstrelly. And I wouldn't call that this either, but this definitely feels like a B movie with a budget.
Yeah, it's a B monster movie is what it is. What it boils down to. And it's enjoyable. It's going in, it's nothing that you're going to take seriously. You're not going to get Shakespeare.
Let me tell people what this is.
Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah, let me tell you people what this is so that we can talk about it. I'm not going to do like a whole read through the plot.
Snakes on a Plane. That's what it is.
But I got to say this because I have to explain what my son's reaction to it was. So, Samuel L. Jackson plays an FBI agent. He's escorting a witness to the kid's father's murder, from Honolulu to Los Angeles, and the mob, the Hawaiian mob, or Japanese mob, whatever it was, that wants to kill this witness before he gets to trial, plants venomous snakes on a plane that they've commandeered It's a passenger plane, so they've kind of taken over first class, and everybody else has to sit in coach, which is actually a major plot point of this thing. And on this plane, in the cargo area, is a box of dozens of different venomous snakes, which are all hyped to aggression through the use of pheromones that are laced on lays because it's Hawaii. So the bomb goes off. The snakes are then let loose, and we have two immediate problems that pretty much carry the plot of this movie, such as it is. The snakes are biting people. Okay, there's a good solid once we get going, hour-ish of this. How long is this movie? Of this, I'm in the wrong one. 106-minute movie. About a solid hour of people being bit in the private parts by snakes. Just bit on the boobs, bit in the penis, bit in the vagina. You know, there's one snake that says he has all the good words. It's a whole thing. It's just everyone's getting bit everywhere by these snakes, and they are a variety of snakes with a variety of venom. Some are instantly deadly, some are deadly in a little while, some are not necessarily deadly but will make you really, really sick. So one of the complications of this movie is they get a guy who's a snake expert, and he's like, you know, and Bobby Cavanaugh, who is the other FBI agent who's running home base, he's like, make anti-venom. And the guy's like, for what? Which snake? And how much? It's not a fire hose. That's not how this works. So a lot of this is them trying to science the fuck out of how do you heal a plane full of people, most of which bitten by snakes, a variety of snakes with a variety of venom. So that's actually a cool element of this, which I never really keyed into before. The second problem that they have is the snakes keep damaging the plane. So as they're slithering around, they're biting wires, they're knocking things out. The plane is slowly but surely not only losing its pilots, but it's also losing its flyability. So Samuel L. Jackson has to save a plane full of people who are sick or dying from venomous snakes, has to somehow keep everyone safe from the snakes once the original wave of attacks pass, has to keep the witness safe because we don't want to lose him. That makes this all for nothing. And then eventually we lose the pilots, so he has to land the plane, which when this happens, they are about mid-flight. They actually say, like, we're halfway to Los Angeles. It'll take just as much time to get back as it will to just finish the flight. So that's the whole movie. That is it in a nutshell. And I will say this, and then I will concede the floor to you, Jason. I like this movie a lot. I think it holds up as a fun premise, and I think it's a very efficient script. My son was like, I hate this movie. It's an hour and 46 minutes of people being bitten in the dick by snakes. No, thank you. Your witness.
Well, I mean, yes, it's one of those movies. I mean, you get all you need to know in the poster and the film title. It's Snakes on a Plane. Some of it is a little outlandish, like the 35-foot Burmese python that they.
Oh, was it a python or was it a boa constrictor?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a Burmese python that's on the plane that somehow gets up into the luggage area to fall through plastic. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Don't think too hard about this.
Yeah. So it's a big ass snake on the plane that can kill you. And it was a nod to, you know, the throwback of Anaconda that we've reviewed here in the archives. It's just one of those movies that you can just throw on and just tune out and enjoy it. You don't. It's not too hard to think about. You don't have to like try to analyze anything. It's just snakes on these motherfucking snakes on my motherfucking plane.
Yeah,
that's it. And it, like you said, it does have a really good premise of the snakes damaging the plane, because that adds a whole level of tension and relatability of real life. Like, what if this happened? And you know, and the bomb, the explosion, the release of snake, like you said, mentioned, happens when they're at the point, the quote unquote point of no return, where it's either they continue to fly, either way they go, and it's going to be the same distance and same outcome. So it's intriguing, it's fun, it's mind-numbingly fun, and Samuel L. Jackson just gets to be like this really over-the-top FBI agent that
That's
is
because
pissed
he's
off
not
for a
over the
steak on
top,
the
though.
plane.
I actually think that's a mischaracterization of him. I don't think he is over the top. He's playing it straight. Like, when he says, I have had enough of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane, he's exasperated. He has been pushed to the limit, and finally he just kind of fucking snaps. It almost actually comes out of nowhere. Like, upon second viewing, that line doesn't necessarily match the rest of the tenor of the movie, the way he plays his character. For the 99.9% of this movie, he is serious, he is heroic, he is dashing, he is doing all the things an action hero should be. He is cool under pressure. When when the kid is like, I want to help, I feel like a third wheel around here, and he's like, this whole thing is about you, though. If I lose you, what was the point of any of it? These people die for nothing. Like, he's doing all the stuff that we talked about with Black Snake Moon, he's kind of doing here. And then he has that moment of like, uh, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. They are holding on by a thread, and he just burst out with, I have had enough of these motherfucking snakes on these motherfucking plane. He is the furthest thing from over the top. Now, you want to talk about the rest of the cast, who are every awful passenger on a plane ever? Sure.
Well, no, I'm just saying he's over the top because he's himself turned up to 11 in wrestling terms.
Okay.
It's the fact that he's over the top in the fact that he's trying to figure out what to do. He's very animated because he is at his wits end because he doesn't know what to fucking do. He doesn't, and it comes across. And a key point when it comes across is when they're trying to identify the snakes, and he's sitting there holding what is obviously a huge rubber snake, and he's like, "It's a green one. It's got green on it." And the one of the perceived gay flight attendant said, "It's more of like a, I think it's like he said, a
He's like,
jade or an
it's like
emerald."
more of a teal.
Yeah, and he goes, "Yeah, that." And it's just like he's over the top in the point of he's just done with everything. Like everything that could go wrong. It's basically the Murphy's Law theory. Anything that can go wrong does go wrong. And it's just like he's at his wits' end. He doesn't know what the hell to do. He's trying to convey information to the ground. And then when at the end of the movie when they go to land the plane, and we have Keenan that tells him that, yeah, I've got all these flight hours, and comes to find out it's a flight simulator that he doesn't even have the high score on. His brother does.
Right.
And he's just like, great, well, this is what my life has come to. I'm fucking done.
I love this movie. I'm sorry, I feel bad that my son didn't like it as much. It was definitely like a cultural phenomenon in its time, but it also didn't do that well. Like, for whatever reason, I think this is one of those movies where this is a fun rental. Like, this didn't bring people to the theater the way they thought it would, but I do think it has had a second and third life as home viewing. This is definitely a fun movie to put on, as for a viewing party to like watch with your friends, etc. I just want to conclude with this last little bit that I really enjoyed from the movie. First of all, I have been the snake doctor. I have absolutely been that guy going, all right, I need the details here so I can help you. And they're like, it's blue. And I'm like, ugh, I don't even.
Yeah. I think we've all been, I think in one way or other, we've all been in that situation, especially as parents.
But I definitely. But here's the other thing I'll tell you, and this will be the last comment I make on this. We can move on. The best thing about Snakes on a Plane, outside of Samuel Jackson's individual performance and some of the silly dialogue that's supposed to be over the top, is how deadly serious everyone plays this movie. It is a ridiculous premise, and everyone is acting like not that this is an ordinary thing. Everyone's acting appropriately freaked out, but this isn't played for laughs. You know what I mean? This isn't a satire. This isn't a parody. This isn't, you use the phrase again, over the top. And I'm like, it's over the top because the situation is so far out of the realm of possibility. Like, you know, the idea of like basically a terrorist somehow or other gets snakes with, you know, snakes and pheromones on this plane to make this moisture happen is pretty far out of the realm of possibility. But you go with it because you're here for the premise. You're here to suspend disbelief. The cast itself plays it deadly fucking serious. Like, they are absolutely reacting the way people would react, good, bad, or indifferent. And it's not like it doesn't feel like, you know, like a Wayans Brothers scary movie kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And we'll talk about the Wayans brothers here in a little bit. Um, but yeah, it doesn't seem like it doesn't go as far as I'm gonna get you, sucker,
Yeah. Like, it's
or
not silly.
yeah, it's played for laughs because it's trying to take itself serious,
Right.
and that's one of the key points
And
that
that's what makes it work.
makes it. Yeah, that's what makes it work.
Right. Because if they really weren't engaged with the material, I don't think this works nearly as well. But everyone's like, nope, this is a real problem. All right. So that's Snakes on a Plane. I love this movie. If you haven't seen it, if you're, you know, if you're into watching people get bit by snakes for an hour, um, it's a fun one to watch. It's Samuel L. Jackson's great. The cast, his supporting cast works just fine. Everybody is serviceable, efficient. I don't think this movie is any longer than it has to be. Though I did get one comment from my kids, like, when does he get on the fucking plane and get, you know, when do the snakes start? I mean, and I told them, like, you can't just start with the snakes. You got to build up to it. We got to get to know characters. We got to build this world a little bit. We have to set up what the environment is because we're going to be in there a while. So that's what I mean. Like, it's a really efficient script. So definitely a high recommend on my list. And one of the reasons why I wanted to start with it and talk about it tonight. So let's talk about one of my favorite movies of all time, because I love boxing. And I grew up, Jason, with Mike Tyson. And more specifically, I grew up with Don King. Only in America, baby. Only in America. Don King is the American dream.
Dusty Rhodes.
Yes, they are the same person,
Yes.
if you will. Now, I am a child of the 80s. I was born 1976. I started to be conscious of the world in 1981, 82. Mike Tyson. I said I don't have heroes. I don't believe in people. But I did have two, because there were two people that got past my. I've always been very cynical. I was a very cynical child. But there were two people that somehow pierced the veneer of my cynicism, even as an elementary school boy. And one of them was the Ultimate Warrior. Take the two pilots. But I've talked enough about the Ultimate Warrior on this network. The other one was Mike Tyson. God, if I could have been anybody back when I was a kid, all boys have their power fantasies and their heroes. Who do they want to be when they grow up? I wanted to be Mike Tyson. I wanted to look like the Ultimate Warrior, but I wanted to be Mike Tyson.
I think everybody in our generation had that fascination with Mike Tyson, because he was just this. Not only did he have the video game that every kid could relate to,
Sure,
he was just a wrecking force, and he got me actually. And I grew up watching boxing as well, and because of Mike Tyson. Now, since he retired and lost to Buster Douglas, I no longer watched it. But I was watching fights on HBO because of Mike Tyson. I mean, Saturday nights fights on HBO. Mike Tyson was on. I was watching.
And they were over before bedtime because they were over in the first round.
Yeah, I don't think he had very many fights that went any significant length.
My favorite memory is, I remember, like, my dad to this day still doesn't like to watch anything violent. Like, movies are fine, but like, he doesn't like football, wrestling, boxing, any of that stuff. But he would sometimes watch it with me, and more to the point of this story, he didn't want to watch boxing, but he knew it was on and he knew I liked it. So they put on in their bedroom. They put on HBO for me, and they were like, "Go watch your boxing." And I remember like he came in to kind of sit with me for a little bit and watch it with me, and it was over. Like it was over in the first round, as many a Mike Tyson fight is. And they still had airtime they had to fill. You remember that? Like these things were slated for about an hour to 2 hours with packages and interviews and stuff. And Mike Tyson's fights were over, and they would just like replay the fight 100 times. They would interview the janitor. And I know
Yeah.
this because my father was like laughing hysterically. This kind of guy my father is. They were laughing hysterically about how they were scrambling to fill the airtime because I think at one point somebody had said to me like Mike Tyson wasn't the best bet for pay-per-view because who's going to pay to watch a guy, and this relates to the movie, who's going to pay to watch a guy knock somebody out in less than a minute?
Yeah, and like Mike Tyson fights were like must-see events.
Yeah.
Vegas would like sell out all the time, and if you was a star in the 80s and 90s, you was at Mike Tyson fights, and you wanted to be seen at Mike Tyson fights.
Yeah. I think another thing to bring up is Pat and I talked about this when we did the History of Boxing podcast, which for those of you who have never heard, Pat Mullen and I, who will be on the Cobra Kai podcast next week, we did about a 2-year run, one fighter per episode of the entire history of the heavyweight championship, going all the way back to Jack Johnson in the early 20th century, up until modern times, which at the time that we ended the podcast, modern was Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, and Tyson Fury. And the episode on Mike Tyson came right after the episode of, how did he phrase it? Like Unsung Heroes or whatever it was. There was a bunch of guys in between the Ali and Holmes era and Mike Tyson. At that time, I think there were 2 or 3 different belts, and there was a lot of like no-name champions. And so when Mike Tyson started to rise to prominence, he was Thanos. A couple of years back, Canelo did a very similar thing where he just one fight after another collected all the belts, and then he had the super middleweight, all the super middleweight titles. But that's what Mike Tyson did after Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes, I believe it was. The titles were fractured; they were all over the place, and they were passed around by a bunch of guys, none of which could capture the imagination of the people, which is why the focus at that time was on Sugar Ray Leonard, the 4 Kings: Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, who once punched out a horse, and Tommy Hearns. And then Mike Tyson comes along and brings back to prominence the heavyweight division. And he does so by running through the heavyweight division like, he just beat the fuck out of everybody, and he got all the belts, and he was the undisputed champion until he didn't really get beat by Buster Douglas. He got beat by Robin Givens, but that's a whole other story, which was told on the History of Boxing podcast, now in our archives. So Don King was as much a fun figure of that era as was Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was like, Black Steve Austin, black trunks, no nonsense, totally serious. I mean, now you think about Mike Tyson, he's a lot of personality. He's got a pet tiger. He's in the Hangover movies. He has so much history. He's a pop culture icon. At that time, Mike Tyson didn't do a whole lot of talking. Even later, a little bit later in his career, he's threatening to eat people's children. But
he broke his back.
That's after Buster Douglas. Before
he broke
Buster
his back.
Okay, go ahead.
I broke my back. Do you not remember that interview?
No, I don't.
Yeah, he tells. So it's after one of his fights, and he's sitting there smiling. He goes, "Yeah, I broke my back." He's like, okay.
Yeah.
He wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he was the hardest hitting one.
So the point of me bringing this up is, and we'll transition to the movie. Don King, Mike Tyson took care of it in the ring. Don King took care of it outside of the ring. Don King was as much a personality and cultural icon back then as anybody. He was known for his crazy looking hair, his charisma. Also known to be a crook and a thief and shady businessman and all of that. Him and Al Sharpton, two of a kind. But that's what the Great White hype is aping, is the Mike Tyson Don King relationship. So what is the Great White hype? It's a 1996 American sports comedy film directed by Reginald Hudlin. If you don't know who Reginald Hudlin is, well, you should. He directed House Party, Boomerang. He wrote and produced Bebe's Kids. Yo, Jason, Bebe's Kids, they don't die.
They multiply.
Goddamn right. He directed The Ladies' Man. Come on, do your line, Jason. Say the thing.
What? Baby?
The Ladies' Man.
Which one? Can I buy you a fish sandwich?
Thank you.
Or I got a little Cavassier.
He also directed Serving Sarah. He produced and directed Marshall. He directed Black Godfather. If you look for something more recent, he directed a movie that went to Disney Plus called Safety. Most recently, he did a Christmas movie with Eddie Murphy called Candy Can Lane, which is on Netflix. So you can check that out. So that's who that is. It stars Samuel L. Jackson, who's doing the Don King role, Peter Berg, Damon Wayans, who's playing essentially Mike Tyson, Jeff Goldblum, John Lovitz, Cheech Marin, John Rhys-Davies, Sally Richardson, and Jamie Foxx. The film satirizes racial preferences in boxing and was inspired by the Larry Holmes 1982 fight with Jerry Cooney, who was known as the Great White Hope, and Mike Tyson's 1995 return fight versus Peter McNeely, which we talked about on the podcast. Entertainment Weekly called Reverend Fred Sultan, who's played by Samuel Jackson, as a Don King clone. This made $8 million at the box office. All right, so we did that whole preamble because that pretty much is the plot of this movie. Damon Wayans is beating a bunch of, is the heavyweight champion. He's all serious. He's, black tights. Doesn't say a whole hell of a lot. Samuel Jackson does the talking for him. And people are getting bored with Damon Wayans because he's knocking everybody out. The fights seem too easy. And I didn't realize this, he is being pursued and called out by the actor's name is Michael Jace, who's the character is Marvin Shabazz. He was actually in The Shield, and he went to prison in most recent years. That's a shame. In any case, Marvin Shabazz is the number one contender for Damon Wayans' title, but they keep ducking him and blowing him off. That's a big thing. And part of the reason why this day is different than any other day is Samuel Jackson is realizing that they don't have the money to actually pay him because these fights aren't making any money. And they don't feel like a fight with Marvin Shabazz is going to draw either. They just feel like it's another, and I'm going to paraphrase what's said in the movie, it's just more black guys beating up black guys, and people are tired of it. They don't want to see it. It's boring. So what we need is a story. And what better story than the rise of the Great White heavyweight champion? Except that there are none. So they got to invent one. So it's kind of the Rocky thing where Apollo Creed's opponent can't make the fight. And so they're just kind of looking through the book of local Philadelphia fighters, and he sees the Italian stallion Rocky Balboa. And that one wasn't so much about race as it was like, oh, this underdog schlub, this will be a great story. Same kind of thing here. They're looking for a white heavyweight champion, which is hilarious because they actually played real footage of real white guys getting really knocked out. And one of them is, God bless him, Tommy Morrison, who was in Rocky V and I think won at least one belt at some point. Had a very famous fight against George Foreman. He won plenty of fights. There was no need to show him getting knocked out like that, poor bastard. But yeah, they can't find a credible white heavyweight to put up against Damon Wayans in order to save his career. So they invent one. The idea is put forth that he was actually knocked out as an amateur by a now retired white fighter who's played by Peter Berg. So they go to Peterburg, and Peterburg is kind of a hippy dippy, and he's playing in a rock band. And they were like, "What if you could fight the heavyweight champion? What if we paid you a lot of money?" And because he's hippy dippy, he's like, "Well, I'm gonna take that money and I'm gonna cure homelessness." He's also half a retard. So
It's going to clear Cleveland's homelessness, then homelessness across the world.
yeah, so he takes the fight because we can't spend too long on this. And they reshape his image. He's Irish. What's his actual name in the movie? He's Irish Terry Conklin, which is really funny because there's actually a Conklin fighter who's Irish. But he's like, "Why am I Irish?" I'm like, "I'm not Irish." They're like, "It just means you're white." Hilarious. So they reshape his image. They give him a gimmick. They put him with a white trainer who very much plays into race. And they're just like, and he's like, "I hate no man. Why do you do this?" What's great about Peter Berg's character is he very much leans into the role he's supposed to be playing, and he believes his own hype. He was like, "I knocked you out once, I'll knock you out again. I only went away from boxing because I don't really want to hurt people, but for money, the right kind of inspiration, I'll do it." So he's like making fun of Damon Wayans. Meanwhile, Damon Wayans like, "I'm a professional fighter, and you haven't boxed since the amateurs. I'm going to murderize you." So he eats ice cream and acts like a dick and doesn't train, and this is kind of what happened with another fighter who won the heavyweight title, proceeded to not train, and then got his ass knocked out in recent history. True story. So anyway, Andy Ruiz, that's what I was thinking of. Good old fat Andy Ruiz. So Peter Berg trains and trains and trains, and they build up this fight. They fight, and Damon Wayans murders him. Straight up kills him dead. Knocks him out. There's a subplot with Jeff Goldblum, who's a documentarian who ends up being bribed and hired by Samuel L. Jackson's Don King analog to become a marketing person. And they fired John Lovitz's character, who had that role. Publicist would be the right word. And then halfway through that, he gets this idea of, "Oh no, I'm gonna sign Terry away, and we're gonna destroy you." And then that doesn't happen. So Damon Wayans finally knocks out Irish Terry Conklin, and then Marvin Shabazz hops the ropes and fucking beats the fuck out of Damon Wayans, and Don King / Samuel L. Jackson turns to the crowd and he says, "Only in America, baby, and we will bring you this on pay-per-view." And that's the movie. I fucking love this movie, Jason. It's so good. I'm like, my plot synopsis does not do it justice.
It is good. And every time that Samuel L. Jackson's gonna fuck somebody over, he goes, "I love you.
I love you." Don't do that to me. Oh no. It's like he says, "I love you," and you can almost feel the piano falling out of the sky.
Yeah, I love you. And he's got that real big smile. I love you. But yeah, this movie is so fun. Especially the eccentric characters that you get.
Oh yeah, Jamie Foxx plays the manager for Marvin Shabazz, and he has some funny line deliveries.
Jamie Foxx is funny in it. Jeff Goldblum's fun, hilarious.
I want to destroy you.
Him playing off of Samuel L. Jackson, just their deliveries being so polar opposites is so good, because you got Samuel L. Jackson, who is like loud, brash, in your face, and Jeff Goldblum's like.
I wish, because they casted Jeff Goldblum as the wizard in Wicked, they had casted Samuel L. Jackson as Elphaba.
I hate you. But yeah, and Jeff Goldblum's like, he tries to be like this really sly, menacing, working the shadows guy, and it doesn't work.
Right.
But it's hilarious. And we talked about Pulp Fiction earlier. There is a nod to Pulp Fiction in this movie. I'm curious if you caught it.
Just go ahead for time's sake.
No, I mean it's when they're at the fight. There's a guy in a black and white suit with long black hair, and Samuel L. Jackson acknowledges him. as being John Travolta from Pulp Fiction.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So yeah, this movie, I mean, there's not really a lot to say about it except it's a good movie just to put
If
on and
if
kill
you're a boxing
afternoon with.
if you're a boxing fan and you know the history that I recounted, this movie works on a lot of levels and is goddamn hilarious and is a wicked satire of modern boxing, especially in the late 80s, early to mid 90s. It's not so much that way anymore. Boxing has changed considerably, but back and there are plenty of the current heavyweight champion is white. He ain't from America because we're soft. But this white boy's from the Ukraine where they make men. But Tyson Fury, giant Englishman, was the undisputed heavyweight champion for a while. Beat the fuck out of Deontay Wilder. Plenty of white guys in boxing right now, just not American. Um, you would have to write an entirely different movie to satirize modern boxing, beginning with Saudi blood money. But that's a story for another day. But if you were a boxing fan back then, as we were, this is wildly, wickedly funny. If you're not a boxing fan, if you're the girlfriend of the boyfriend who likes boxing and you're just watching it with them, there's still a great performance in this. Tim Samuel L. Jackson's hilarious. Like I said, Jamie Foxx, like this shit that he says, where it just feels like he wasn't really reading from the script, he was just ad-libbing. That's all funny stuff. Damon Wayans is such a proper dick. Like, you don't want him to win. You absolutely, like, by the end of this movie, as ridiculous as Terry Conklin is at times, you are still cheering for him to beat the fuck out of Damon Wayans because Damon Wayans is awful.
And we can't get over Damon Wayans' physique
Oh,
by
yeah.
the time the title fight. He looks like a lowercase b.
Yeah, it's not great makeup job on him, body makeup. But Samuel L. Jackson, who's the star of our show, he really just brings it all together. He's the glue really holding this movie together as the Don King analog. He has such charisma. Like, this is one of those roles where you could not have found anyone better than Samuel L. Jackson for this. It was like a role he was born to play. I wish it had made more money. It only made $8 million, but it's a really niche movie, so I'm not that surprised. But it's a movie that if you find it on streaming and watch it, you'll have yourself a fun time if you're open to this kind of humor. I'll give you the last word on this and we'll move on to Soul Men.
Oh no, I mean, there's not much to say. It's a good afternoon movie. Just kind of kick back, watch, enjoy the laughs, and just kind of chill out too.
Yep. All right, our final Samuel L. Jackson starring vehicle is Soul Men, a 2008 American musical comedy film directed by Malcolm D. Lee. If you don't know who Malcolm D. is, well, you should. He was the director of Undercover Brother, which is Jason's online name. He was the writer, producer, and director of Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins. He directed Scary Movie 5, Barbershop, The Next Cut, and Space Jam, and he is the monster that directed Space Jam: A New Legacy. Ugh.
We might want to not mention his filmography.
Yeah. He's got some television directing credits. He did an episode of Everybody Hates Chris, Wu-Tang, and American Saga, which was reviewed in its entirety by myself and Jesse, all 3 seasons, right here on the Rattle Legend Broadcasting Network. He did the pilot for Harlem. Harem. Yes, okay. Harlem. He did the pilot and another episode. And he wrote and directed and created The Best Man, the final chapters. So that's Malcolm D. Lee. It stars Samuel L. Jackson, Bernie Mac, Sharon Leal, Sean Hayes. Released in November of 2008. It was one of 3 of Mac's films that were released after his death, and was actually released on the same day as another posthumous film, Madagascar Escape to Africa. Mac and Isaac Hayes, who was also in the movie, died August 9th and 10th of 2008, respectively. Director Lee said the film was heavily re-edited to soften the tone of the film as a tribute to the 2 actors. It is the last Weinstein Company film to be distributed by MGM. Not a financial success. On a $40 million budget, this thing bombed. $12.3 million. So, it's one of those where not everyone's going to be a zinger. So, the premise of this movie is basically Samuel L. Jackson and Bernie Mac were part of a Motown group called The Real Deal. They were led by singer Marcus something or other, Marcus Hooks, who is played by
John Legend.
John Legend. Yes. Eventually, Marcus Hooks goes solo, leaving The Real Deal to do their own solo thing. They get one song out there, but then there's a falling out, which we'll learn was over a woman, Samuel L. Jackson's woman, to be specific. So Bernie Mac went on to leave music, open up car washes, and became rich and retired from that. Samuel L. Jackson struggled, got into crime, and eventually went to prison. The movie picks up after Marcus Hook has passed away. They want to do a tribute to him in a concert and all kinds of stuff. And so they reach out to The Real Deal, specifically Bernie Mac, and say, hey, will you please play at Marcus Hook's funeral? So Bernie Mac then goes to find Samuel L. Jackson, who is living in squalor, says, hey, why don't we put the band back together? And Samuel L. Jackson tells him to go fuck himself. So Bernie Mac's like, okay, but there's money involved here and you're poor. So they decide that they're going to do it. And for the rest of the movie, it's a road trip movie. They start off in one place, then they're going to get to, the idea is to get to Memphis for the show, and then eventually the Apollo Theater in Harlem. Along the way, we learn that the reason why they had split up in the first place was Samuel L. Jackson was dating a woman named Odetta. Bernie Mac ended up with her because Samuel L. Jackson was a shitty person. Samuel L. Jackson never forgave Bernie Mac for what he feels was breaking up their relationship. Well, as it turns out, and we learned this later, through a trip to, I believe it's Tulsa, they stop at Odetta's... Memphis. Okay. They stop at Odetta's home, where they find out that she has passed away, but she has a daughter. And we will learn over the course of the next few scenes that Samuel L. Jackson is her father, and that he's actually been supporting her with the royalties he got from The Real Deal. But she doesn't know that that's him, and he's never reached out to her for a variety of reasons. We learned that Samuel L. Jackson felt like he would have been a poor father, and he would have just messed up her life. So he supported her from afar, but he never meant for her to meet him. They eventually make amends. There's a subplot about the girl's boyfriend who they beat up earlier in the movie because he's a shithead and he was violent with her. He more or less becomes a stand-in villain. Samuel L. Jackson ends up in jail. Bernie Mac breaks him out. Then this becomes the Blues Brothers for no good reason. They get to the performance. They sing. They get to New York. They have the one final performance where they learn that there was no money, which is kind of a funny thing. But all along the Watchtower, Samuel L. Jackson and his daughter are able to reform their father-daughter relationship. And I believe, if I remember correctly, there wasn't much more than that. All's well that ends well. Was there a detail that I missed that you wanted to pipe in on?
No, I mean, it's pretty much a buddy comedy.
Yeah, it's a road trip movie.
Yeah, you see the mishaps along the way. The whole time Bernie Mac thinks Samuel L. Jackson's dying when he's just got pleurisy. It's pretty hilarious.
Yes.
And the whole bit about the mother-daughter is hilarious. And it really goes unnoticed, because if you're not paying attention, you miss a lot of the background bickering between them two, which is absolutely hilarious.
Oh, the best part of this movie is Bernie Mac's charisma and line delivery. Look, Samuel L. Jackson's great in everything that he does, but this movie dies without Bernie Mac. No pun intended. He is really the one that's pushing it, because Samuel L. Jackson's character is such a mean old prick. You know, he's the straight man, so Bernie Mac gets to be the silly one, and Bernie Mac is great as the silly one because he doesn't. If you've ever seen his stand-up, Bernie Mac's delivery and sort of silly approach to telling a story is what got him famous. Like, if you've ever seen The Kings of Comedy, I assume you have. For those that don't know, The Kings of Comedy is a comedy concert film. It's Bernie Mac, DJ Hewley, Steve Harvey, and Cedric the Entertainer. And Bernie Mac was the headliner of that one, and he's the fucking star of this thing. That's actually what got him his sitcom, was telling the story about his um, niece and nephew, nieces and nephew, who their mother was using drugs and he had to like adopt them. That was what the whole Bernie Mac show was about. Um, and like everyone, if you don't know any of Bernie Mac's comedy, you've at least heard or know, him talking about his nieces and nephews, him downstairs. You don't talk to me like I don't
Yeah.
live here. I don't get some. That's the other really famous one. I don't get some milk and cookies.
I never watched the Bernie Mac show,
I
but
did.
uh, it's played on. I think the whole series is on. Well, what series was on?
Mm,
I think it's on like HBO Max or
yeah.
Max or something. So I may have to check it out.
You get some milk and cookies when you do.
I'm gonna get some milk and cookies. But you know what?
What?
I have some peppermint.
That was last week.
I know,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to tell you I had some.
Bernie Mac and Samuel Jackson have some great chemistry together. They play off each other really, really well. It's funny to see Samuel Jackson in kind of the straight man role because he can be very over the top and funny. But you can't have both guys doing that. If one guy is going to be over the top silly, the other guy has to be more grounded. And Samuel L. Jackson really gets to, in what is essentially a very silly movie, Samuel L. Jackson gets to show a lot of his dramatic chops. I like the bond that he has with the daughter once they form it. And the other thing about this is, they are performing gigs as they're doing the drive to get ready for, as you would, to get their chops back in order to get tuned up for this big show. It's kind of fun to see Samuel L. Jackson work through his rust, his stage rust, and they're known for their comedy, they're known for their acting, but Samuel L. Jackson's actually a hell of a musician. And Bernie Mac's no slouch either. Like their version of like what became like the real deal hit, "I'm Your Puppet," is actually quite good. Especially if you're into that old town Motown sound. It's actually a very nice song, and it's very well done by both of these guys. It's a shame it didn't do better than it did. And I think like I was reading some of the criticism about the movie. He's like, yeah, nobody gives a fuck about Motown. Fair. So, but it's worth it if you're in any way interested in anything going on in this movie. What do you think of it, Jason? Beyond what I've said.
Oh, I mean, it's hilarious. The fact that the chemistry between those two is off the charts. I would really wish that Bernie Mac wasn't taken from us as soon as he was.
Yeah,
I think he's one of my favorite comedians
the world loves a
because
world-class talent.
it wasn't just the way he delivers. It's just the charisma, the
Mm-hmm.
presence he has on screen, and it's like, and it shows in one scene when they're at the house, and the boyfriend comes up and they find out that he hit the girl, and Samuel L. Jackson like beats the shit out of him. And Bernie Mac's just like, I would just shot him. I would just fucking shot him. Wouldn't have gave a damn. Just shot him. Fuck. I'm too old for his shit. I would have shot him and not worried nothing about it. And just how he says it,
Mm-hmm.
you know that it's like somebody like that. That after everything's done, they would say they have a plan what they would have done,
Yeah.
but they did not get involved. But if it was them that was in there, this is how they would have done it.
The bit
And
with him and Jennifer Coolidge is hilarious, and because I could totally see Bernie Mac picking up Jennifer Coolidge and them fucking.
oh yeah, have you ever had a gummy? The fuck? Yeah. So this movie is fun. I wish it would have done. I think this is like really a hidden gem.
Yeah,
I don't think a lot of people have seen it. Uh,
clearly not.
yeah, I mean, this is definitely a hidden gem. I would highly recommend seeing it just for the remembrance of Bernie Mac and the fact that Samuel L. Jackson brings his aura to it as well, and they get to play off of each other and get and they was having fun. You know, they was having fun during this movie.
Yeah.
You get Isaac Hayes, you get some of the legends that our generation grew up with, and you just laugh. Especially the whole thing about the Peabody
Hmm.
when they're trying to rent a room and why they can't rent the room and like and it's like it's just one of those things that like you appreciate what the world's missing out on currently with Bernie Mac not being alive.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's it. I think we've run out of gas here. Look, the reality is we could have talked about Samuel L. Jackson and his movies for like 3 hours, and we still wouldn't have run out of stuff to talk about. But we really wanted to refine this down to 3 movies where he's at the top of the cast list, and the movies get to kind of feature him. I think the only other way to have approached this was maybe throw one of his more dramatic roles in there, but again, it's a massive cat. It's a massive filmography to sort of sift through and find. I think we picked 3 solid Samuel L. Jackson entries here. So once in a lifetime talent. Credit to the black race and acting in general. Just a great all around actor. I think if you can look up to anybody in Hollywood, you could do worse than Samuel L. Jackson. Jason, any last words here on the great Samuel?
No, I mean, just if you get a chance, definitely check out all 3 of these movies. Um, Great White Hype and Soul Men are the lesser of the 2 that people don't really know about and probably will have to seek out. Snakes on a Plane is exactly what it is, a mind-numbing B monster movie that is just fun, and it has a great bunch of one-liners and probably some of the worst CGI that would make Robert Winfrey's head explode. So definitely enjoy it. It's been fun. Completing another year of Black History Month here on the Radler Broadcasting Network. So yeah, I mean that's about it.
All
I
right.
have no plugs.
Before we go, Jason, let's talk about next year. Okay.
Okay.
I've revised this a little bit. I revised it from what it originally was. We have 3 shows because one of the shows has to be dedicated to football because it's Super Bowl season, right? But I've got 3 Black History shows for you, yes. Long Road to Ruin, Breakin' and Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. What do you think?
I could do that.
Okay. The next one is these are modern movies. These are very recent entries into black cinema that I think need some examination. Overlooked on Damn You Hollywood, overlooked on the Rad Legend Broadcasting Network for a variety of reasons, but I feel like they deserve the Mark and Jason treatment. They are The Book of Clarence, The American Society of Magical Negroes, and They Clone Tyrone. Think about that one.
They Clone Tyrone and the Magical Negroes.
Yeah.
I've heard horrific things about both, so I'm really not looking forward to that. But yeah, I think I want to pitch this. I want to pitch our actor spotlight next year.
Well, hang on, because there's one more spot. There's only 4 weeks of February, and one of them is football. So, Long Road to Ruin, Barbershop.
Maybe.
What do you want to do instead, Jason? You want me to kill Barbershop and do something else?
I was going to say, we always do an actor spotlight.
We do.
And I was going to suggest our actor spotlight being one of the greatest actors of our generation of all time.
Okay.
And do Denzel.
Ooh. All right. Let's you and me talk. I will move Barbershop to not Black History Month and just do it whenever with you because I eventually.
But if we do Denzel, we have to do Training Day for it.
I've already done Training Day. It was one of the best on trials I've ever done. That's the first time I talked about Denzel smacking his dick into the scenery.
Okay, well, we can talk. We can hash one out. I mean, Denzel's got a great filmography. So
He does.
I'm sure we can come up.
It would
with
be just as
some
hard to
things.
do to find some really great Denzel starring vehicles versus him just being a part of an ensemble, because he has a career very similar to Samuel Jackson's. Also an Oscar winner. All right. Anyway, it's been another great Black History Month here on the Rattlers and Broadcasting Network. Lots of fun films, lots of great conversations. I always like hanging out with Jason, and now I don't have to talk to you for the rest of the year. So I'm just kidding.
Good.
I don't have to bother Jason now for a while. However, that is the end of February. Next week, we've got. I will be off Monday because I have to pick up my daughter from the airport. However, never fear, I will still be on plenty of shows. I will be on TV Party, hosted by Alexis, and we will be talking The Bear Season 2. And then on Thursday, the 6th, we are finally finishing Cobra Kai Season 6. We are concluding our look at that series. That's what we got going on. This past week, we did our Oscar show, which it took us 3 tries, but we finally got that down. So we looked at all the Best Picture and Oscar nominees. We made our picks. We looked at snubs. We discussed some of the controversies. All around a very good show. That was it for me. We were supposed to do the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, but everyone got sick and couldn't make that. So I'm sure Alexis will get to it eventually. So with that said, for Jason Teasley.
Hold on.
What?
I actually do have a plug.
Oh
I'm actually back Monday night.
Yeah, you're on the monkey. What do you people call yourselves? The unholy spirits or whatever?
The unholy trinity.
Ugh.
You're just not one of the cool kids.
Okay, I've seen what you guys do and I've heard your reviews. You're not one of the cool kids either.
I never said I was.
Yes. Jason will be on Monday's show, run by Alexis. Don't let Alexis and Jason bully you into a tangentially 3-hour show, okay? Keep that shit on the rail.
You mean Alexis and Robert? No, I mean, this movie is so fucking weird and strange. It might be a 3-hour show of us trying to figure out what the fuck happened in this movie. Because
I will never let you guys do another one by yourselves again if that happens.
No, I mean, Mark, this movie is something that you would watch and you would be like, okay, what the fuck was that? So that's just a preview for our audience. You're going to hear a lot of me going, I have no idea what the fuck I watched. Really, I don't know. It was like Final Destination with a fucking monkey.
Okay.
That's my tagline for it.
Enjoy yourselves. All right. For Jason Teasley of the Unholy Spirits, whatever the fuck you people call yourselves, I need to clean up my house. Be well, be safe, and behave.